So we're going to stretch your mind a little bit now with a piece, with a story that was done by someone you're going to meet in a moment, because you're going to meet 4 student storytellers up here. But in our storytelling, we encourage people to use music, to use poetry, to use other things. So
different types of talent, and my favorite is spoken word. So we're going to see an amazing piece.
Spoken word, amazing piece, Terrius Harris, and the next panel will be Imani's. So I'm going to step off.
Yeah. That's supposed to play, right?
Terrius, I'm roll Terrius pieces.
Thank you.
Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Now, open your eyes. Thank you, Mother Nature, for the blessings that you have given, from showing us how to breathe to giving us the opportunity of living. Here we stand, here we are, never forgetting our past among the stars. We find your answers among your words through the trees, to understand what's within us as our existence continues to be. Imagine a world where happiness lies, where opportunities are boundless, where we can see our future through her eyes. Imagine a world where there's no hunger nor pain, where there's love in every corner, and the winds of the world evoke the same. Imagine this place where birds chirp all day. Imagine our love. Imagine a place to stay. This place is possible. This place is true. And all it takes is one step from you. Conservation is not just a word. It's a feeling. It's an answer. It even means to try. And it all begins with you taking a pledge to save our planet before it dies. We have one home. We are one people. So let us stand together with Mother Nature. United. Equal.
I'm really excited about this next panel because I get to have a conversation with students. So right now I'm going to bring up our student journalists and workers. So we'll have Terrius Harris from the University of Mississippi, Peter Jurich from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, Harleen Marwah, GW School of Medicine, and Alex Rubenstein, who's now at FreeThink Media. How are you? So thank you all so much. Harris, that was beautiful. I want to start with you and chat a little bit. Tell me about your process of story making and how you decided to go with a spoken word piece, and then where you got your footage from.
So honestly, I'll tell you that it was one of the most difficult pieces that I've ever had to make. I sat for approximately 3 weeks just thinking about exactly what I wanted to cover and how I wanted to cover it. I think that when I decide to do a piece, especially one that's focused on storytelling, I have to first think about what's the best medium to present it as. Some things are better written in word, some things are better written in video, whereas others are best just seeing pictures to feel moved or to actually have that experience. So I chose the spoken word piece because I sat back and I asked myself what was the best Terrius thing to do. So with that, I write poetry daily, and it's something that I really enjoy, and it's my best way to express myself. And so I chose to do this particular piece because I wanted to tell a story, but I wanted it to be relatable in a way that someone could feel the emotion and feel the images that they were seeing. The images themselves were taken from this wonderful experience that I had with one of my professors, who's a Fulbright Scholar and National Geographic Grant winner, Dr. Laura Johnson. She allowed us the opportunity to go with her and do research in Tanzania on the indigenous women and specifically the elders of Mount Kilimanjaro, and we call it the Mamas of Mweka. It was a wonderful experience where we got to see a lot of their conservation techniques and honestly get to know them as individuals. And this was just the best way that I thought was possible to express how I felt and what I learned from that experience.
That's amazing. So you got to spend some time in Arusha. Did you all get to climb Kili?
We got to climb a small portion, not to the top, unfortunately, because it was going to be an extra 13 days, and I think it was like $2,000, and I was like, okay, well, I like this part here.
Fair enough. So I'd love, Peter and Harlan and Alex, I'd love to get ideas and have you all share the types of the mediums that you work in, and how do you tell your stories? Ladies first.
Okay, so I'm a medical student, and I think For me, one of my most powerful tools is communication. So whether that's building trust with patients or getting out broader messages to the general public about how to lead healthier lives. And so that takes form in many different types of communication. The form that I've been using with Planet Forward is written communication. And really what I think the important thing there is to get away from jargon that we're using behind the scenes as clinicians that make it difficult for the general public to relate to what we're saying, to understand what we're saying, and it makes information less accessible. And so really what I try to do through my writing is take scientific concepts that might seem really complex and break it down into a way that is relatable for people and accessible for people, whether that's through language, but I think more powerfully through my patient stories.
Which is so important. I think the notion that you have to quote unquote dumb something down for an audience is really patronizing.
Right.
And like you said, making it accessible, right?
Yes.
And making it so that people understand. And using the antidotes from your patients is always important. We talk about in my class is always character, right? You want to be character driven. So that's amazing. I'm curious, Alex or Peter, and tell me a little bit about the mediums that you utilize. And Alex, I know you're my favorite with the details. Alex is always focused on the details, sometimes. But and the micros, but in particular because you're an alum, and you tell us about what did you do last summer?
I was a winner of the StoryFest participant with you in Alaska.
Yeah.
If you remember.
Vaguely.
Yeah, I'm a filmmaker in DC. I work as an assistant editor at FreeThink Media's documentary film company. So for me, I've always been a huge proponent of the powerful communication form of visual storytelling, particularly video. And I think the intent is really similar with what you were saying about making stories and issues accessible to people elsewhere. I think going to Alaska or doing videos on issues or conflicts or sustainable issues around the globe, and bringing that to people across the country or across the globe who had no idea about that issue is really powerful.
And at FreeThink, if I'm not mistaken, but you all really focus on like the power of the mini doc, right? Like you're putting complex, large topics into this digestible, like 6 to 10 minute format. Why is that so unique?
I think it's becoming less and less unique now because it's becoming the norm, hopefully, because it's such an ideal form of communication, because the audience that you're trying to reach is gonna click on a video for a limited span and try to keep track of that retention rate. And I think the way that form is moving we try to view ourselves as a news and a documentary style, and it's hard to find that balance between dumbing a topic down, but also knowing that your audience is smarter than you think. Absolutely. And trying to give them an edge up on that and relay information, give them the bare bones and hook them in, but also delve deeper into an emotional aspect of a story that they might have not considered before.
Oh, that's really, really important. And Peter, I'm curious, what's your medium that you're utilizing?
So I'm primarily a writer, I think. I was a journalist before, I was a grad student now, and I'm really interested in the power of narrative and getting your audience to relate to characters in your story, and if they learn something along the way while they're following that narrative arch, then
it's a bonus.
It's a total bonus, yeah. But really giving them something to relate to as well is really important to me in my writing.
Awesome. So with the narrative format, I think like you and Harlan, like that's definitely the connection of utilizing and how do you find characters, beautiful images, and then combining everything together, which is so important. What's the most challenging aspect of what the four of you all do and the mediums that you work in as you're trying to tell these stories? Anyone?
I think for me, Tom Zaki mentioned something earlier on how in environmental storytelling there's a lot of finger pointing right now, and for me the challenge is writing a story just so that I'm not paying lip service to people who already agree with me in terms of climate change or environmental issues, but in bringing people on board who might not actually be thinking about these things on a day-to-day basis, and just finding some way to kind of subvert their values and
in a way that's not too divisive, pushes them away, but
exactly.
That's good. I'm curious, Harlan, how do you, working with, telling patient stories, which can sometimes be like obviously confidential, but you still want to, share and utilize and hopefully have a wide, range of people learning from those stories. So are there any challenges there with in particular in the medical field with telling different stories?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, the biggest challenges can also be the biggest strengths of coming from a field that doesn't traditionally engage in these types of conversations. I think when we're dealing with these big complex problems like climate change, an interdisciplinary approach is really going to be essential in finding solutions. And so when I'm talking about patient stories, what I'm really seeing is looking at trends. And, a huge part of my job is listening to people come in, tell me their complaints, tell me their stories, and that's truly a privilege, and I would never want to compromise the confidentiality. But, after you've heard a lot of stories, you start to see trends, whether that's inadequate access to food, whether that's not enough space for safe physical activity, or whether that's how are changing weather patterns affecting asthma season, for instance. And being able to look across those trends and then elevate and be an advocate for the communities, I think is so important. And I see that as part of my professional responsibility to be able to do that.
Awesome. As you all, we talked about the challenges, and what did you discover in telling each of the stories that you have told and are telling? What surprised you most? Was there any sort of aha moment as you were either that sort of breakthrough, Terrius, of you had like weeks of, maybe a little writer's block, and then like you had the moment where like, okay, I got this is making sense. Or when you were in Arusha, or even Alex, when you were in Southeast Alaska, like what are the things that like surprised you, aha moment where you're like, okay, this is working now. This is all kind of coming together.
For me, realizing, I guess, first, like figuring out if I want to write a story about something, or if this is something that I believe is worth sharing, I think it's kind of like finding that pause and that little moment of infinity. So we get caught in these experiences and what we're feeling and everything, but it's sometimes stopping and pausing and just realizing that you are not only here, but be here in this moment. And if something inspires you when you're talking to someone, for me, it was having to speak to the mamas. That's what we call them, mamas. And so speaking to them, we had to use a translator and someone that spoke in their indigenous language while we spoke in English, and translating back and forth. And getting to know them and realizing the things that we relate in, the things that we have in common, was very important to me. It made me realize that even someone a million miles away that lives in an area that doesn't even have access to internet, we can find commonality in that space.
Connections.
Yes, connections. And I think that's absolutely important, because I think that's the entire purpose of storytelling itself, is finding that connection and having someone that has never experienced this particular field, this particular people, be able to relate and connect with them in order to move forward and hopefully bond and want to make a change. And so with that aha moment for me happened when I was sitting at my table, and then I was just writing some poetry, and I was like, wait, hold up.
Yeah.
Then it just came to me, step by step.
Yeah.
That's what I just went with.
Absolutely. Alex, you had some, Southeast Alaska, you had never been. You spent a lot of time focusing on details throughout the trip. A lot of your footage were looking at sort of like the microscopic.
Down and dirty, yeah.
Down and dirty numerous times. We're on a hike, and I look back, and Alex has spent like 5 minutes staring at slugs on the ground. And I was like, what are you doing? I was like, why are you? But it was like there were these, what I felt is that you found all these beauty and not only the grandioseness of, glaciers and these beautiful forests, but in the very small, minute aspects of that.
Yeah, I felt that really tied into how I was so surprised and impressed by the resilience kind of underneath. We're always looking up, and we should be looking up in Southeast Alaska because it's gorgeous, and we see a lot of these effects of glacier and ocean acidification and glacial melt. And I wanted to take a look under the grass, under the trees, and see what is actually thriving and what animals are surviving. I actually got left on the beach one time when you guys were coming back and forth from the boat. And
Hey, they said, let's go, and you were focused.
I found another slug, so yeah. But I think what ties back to what you guys were talking about, listening and finding people that want to share their story, is there are a lot of people who want to share their story. And one thing that I was surprised of in doing interviews in Alaska, and that I'm continuously surprised from in other videos, is how willing people are to open up about themselves and get deep, because you want to get to a heart of an issue, and it's nervous, and you want to do a lot of pre-interviews and background research, but people just want to share their story a lot more than you think they do, and you sit them down in front of a camera once they get a little bit more comfortable. I was on a shoot a couple weeks ago helping out for an interview with former inmates who are running an organization to give job opportunities, because the recidivism rate is super, super high, and unemployment is staggering. Former returning citizens. And these gentlemen were just opening up about their past and their stories, and it was just really elevating and heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time.
Wow, that's awesome. Peter, how do you find characters for your stories? Like, where do you look in, are you focusing in particular in your local community, or are you reaching outside?
One thing I learned recently, and this kind of ties back into your last question about an aha moment, is that my intuition is my best tool that I have. And that's helped me a lot in writing, like any type of writing, really. But I feel like we're all kind of conditioned to maybe ignore our intuition or, disregard it as, something that's too emotional or whatever. But it's there for a reason, and it influences how you think and you feel. And if your intuition is telling you to go a certain route, I think you owe it to yourself to follow that for as far as it's going to take you.
Absolutely. All of you all have produced content for Planet Forward, and I'm curious, when there's so many different places that you all could, to spend your time. I mean, you're young people, there's a variety of options. What makes working with and writing for and producing content for Planet Forward so special?
Frank says no.
Frank says Fair enough. You drank the coffee, like you're like,
yeah,
you get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get it.
I'll pay you that money. I
Venmo me.
But I mean, of all the things that you could be doing, was it just that you all were always interested in environmental impact and stories and through your different mediums?
Yeah, I can say for me that it's a big part of, growing as a student, as a person, as a writer, as a leader, stepping out of your comfort zone. And so for me, that's really what Planet Forward was. I'm coming from a pretty non-traditional background. I'm running to a med school exam after this. They keep us on a pretty tight schedule over there. And so having Planet Forward, welcome me into the fold, being able to write, get comments on my writing and how I'm communicating and sharpening that tool has been incredibly helpful and useful in my personal growth. And hopefully, one day I'll be able to go out there and make an impact through it. And I think that just continuing to encourage people to step out of their comfort zone, to reach across and collaborate with folks who might not come from the same background, and to really just, try to instill hope in the community. I think that that's of tremendous value and can't be measured. And that's, been my experience with Planet Forward.
That's awesome. Alex or Terrius?
For me, Planet Forward, it really represented everything that I was passionate about in one place, and I've never come in contact with anything like it. That is storytelling in the environment. All of my life, I've had a deep connection with the environment and wanting to ensure its safety and protection in the future. And I've also realized how much storytelling has had an impact in my own life, and how much it can have an impact in everyone's life. So having the opportunity to work with Planet Forward has been absolutely phenomenal. It's been having the opportunity to work with amazing people that continue to push and challenge us to write about stories and write about topics and learn more about topics such as medicine and the environment is just spectacular and unbelievable, along with just the opportunity to hone in on our own skills and realize what's important. Planet Forward has just been, I can't even explain how much happiness I get from even just being able to come to the summit or having a conversation with the staff from Planet Forward and them guiding us in a way that pushes us to reach a new level. And it really is an organization that is moving the planet forward. So my question is, why would you not want to be a part of something like that?
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I mean, I'm curious to know what's up next for the four of you in terms of your storytelling and your environmental work. Where are you headed next? What are you doing next, Peter?
Well, I'm graduating this semester.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's great, but also like, ugh. So This summer, I am teaching a course at my university.
Awesome.
I've taught it for the last 2 semesters, and it's one that I really enjoy.
What's the course?
It's called Science and Storytelling.
Ooh.
So it's right up my alley.
Yeah.
And yours, for that matter. So you can. So that'll give me a few months to job hunt.
Yep.
But outside of that, sticking around Madison for a little while. But I love DC, and I'd like to end up here someday.
It's good to know. Awesome. Alex, what's going on at FreeThink?
Oh boy, so much. We're trying to ramp up. We're kind of a startup, few years old documentary film company. I just started last year, but the company is growing exponentially, and we're trying to double our size and double our content. I think that's taken up a lot of my time. I'll be going there right after this.
Gotta go back to work.
Personally, I am still finding and trying to find some good doc stories on my own time to pursue. Right now, I'm on a team for the 48-hour Film Fest, so that's kind of taken up a lot of my time.
That's awesome.
But I'll get back to you on
Yeah.
that when
Well, any fun things happening at FreeThink that we should know about? Any
Yes.
projects you are allowed to plug
Oh
that are
yeah,
coming
absolutely. Particularly concerning the environment, you would hope.
up? Great stories that you want to tell, but we'd love if they hit the environment. That's even better.
Well, I think one thing that kind of relates just on the human level, we just released a video on this organization called Mobile Loaves and Fishes in Texas that has created a housing and employment community for homeless citizens. And it doesn't just give them money, it doesn't give them funding or opportunity, it actually provides an actual physical community of houses and trailers and craft skills that they can make money and do what they love to do. And kind of, they view that the biggest issue of homelessness and cause of homelessness is a, quote, catastrophic loss of family more than anything else. And so bringing them a new community and providing that has been really powerful.
That's awesome. Harleen, what's up next?
A lot of school. Yeah, I mean, I'll be in the hospital the next 2 years, doing a lot of listening, a lot of learning, and I think, taking the lessons from Planet Forward that have really helped me find my voice, that'll hopefully allow me to elevate my patients' voices as well. And so that's something I'm very much looking forward to, and I know that this will be a part of my career for years to come.
That's awesome. Terrius, what's next?
I'm also excited to graduate.
Congratulations.
And so my next step is I'll be moving to Hawaii to work with Teach for America. And I'm beyond excited for that.
That's awesome.
And along with that, I think it'll grant us some amazing opportunities for me to focus in on the stories that I care most about, and that is Indigenous people and the environment. And so hopefully focusing on the Samoan people and what is happening in Hawaii and what kind of changes they are making in the conservation and just overall sustainability will hopefully be a great opportunity for me to continue to move forward with.
That's awesome. Which island?
I am hoping. We'll see. I haven't gotten my exact placement, but I put in a preference for Oahu.
Awesome. Welcome. Well, round of applause for these amazing storytellers. Thank you. I'm looking for my cues. I don't know if we have time for Q&A. Or we have time for Frank Says No. And everyone.
There's always time for
Yep. So thank you all so much. Thank you. And
All right,
we'll bring it
thank
back
you.
up.
Thank you all.